or to sing a song and brighten up your day. Fly away, away from the crowds, up among the clouds. Fly away, fly into the sky, where there's only you and I. Fly away, away from the crowds, up among the clouds. Fly away, fly into the sky, where there's only you and I. Fly away, my little birds, fly away, my little words, fly away, out of my mind. I've not finished. Fly away out of my heart, fly away out of my soul, and build your nest in my big fat book. All right, finished. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. What a privilege to end the comeback edition of the Goa Arts and Literature Festival with that. Thank you so much. Another big hand, please, for Remo. Friends, when Bhai Mauzo and I and the International Center worked to put together this festival 13 years ago, Remo was kind enough to bless us in the first edition and ended the first evening, and I'm really grateful that he's back here to help us end the comeback edition. Is very meaningful, and I'm so grateful that we have so many wonderful writers here as well as all of you, and that is the avatar in which Remo performed last time. It was as a musician who was talking about his cultural history. Today we're talking about a literary life, because he has released really one of the best cultural histories and autobiographies, memoirs of recent years. A big hand for Remo, the author.
Thank you very much. The privilege and the honor is all mine to be here. I never expected to ever be in a literary festival. And here I am among brilliant minds, totally intimidated and humbled, but here I am.
Remo, how did the book happen? When did, you've always been the writer of fantastic lyrics. I recall, you have a tremendous visual sense. We've seen you as an artist before. This is a weighty and important volume because it records an era, a time, a generation, a way of being in transition. A very important book for people like myself who look back at Goan cultural history also. Where did this idea come, and to begin with, where did the idea come and how did you go about doing it?
Well, I'm a great lover of autobiographies to start with, and I always thought that if I ever wrote my own story, I would try to have the honesty that Elia Kazan had in his. He was merciless with himself, with his honesty, and I tried to be honest, as honest as I could, without hurting the feelings of others, because when you're writing your own story, you might want to be very honest, but you've also got to consider other people's privacy. And I had decided that my story wasn't just going to be my story, like me, myself, but the story of Goa, to start with, the Goa that I grew up in, the story of the Bombay that I lived in. When I was studying architecture there in the 70s, my experiences in Europe and in North Africa when I was hitchhiking there in the 80s, in the late 70s, and a little bit of my own professional career. But I did not really want to make that, the main point of the book. It's not a book written by a pop or rock singer glorifying himself and all the hits that he has done. No, in fact, I hardly wrote about those. And again, it was Udayan Mishra who told me, listen, Remo, you've got to write more about these songs, especially the film songs, because India is a film-centric country. And I'm sure they would like to know some anecdotes behind Hamma Hamma, behind Pyar Tohnai Tha, and of course my own English songs, which only a small percentage knows. So that's a small, that's the percentage that listens to non-film and non-Hindi music in India. So the idea to write this, like I told, I've always loved writing, and not only lyrics. I've enjoyed writing for myself. Prose in different ways. I wrote columns for newspapers, for magazines, because I always loved writing. And but it was a huge difference writing a column here and a column there and a book like this, because I have never written a book since. So I didn't know how many words it was going to be. And when my agent Himali Sodhi told me that normally autobiographies in India are about 90,000 words. At the most, they might go up to 100. And when I wrote 120 or 130, I was worried that they were going to slash it. Udayan Mitra read it, and then his things, but Remo, you didn't write about this, but Remo, you didn't write about that, and this and that, and he made it grow into 150,000. So it's all his fault. If it's that big, it's his fault, not mine. But yeah, I really enjoyed writing it. And I think writing about one's own life is something I would suggest, and I would urge everybody to do, whether you're famous, whether you're a writer, whether you're not, just for yourself. It helps to place you like nothing else can. It's more than a therapy session. It's like helps you to know where you've come from, how much you've traversed in life, where you are right now. Maybe it'll even help you to see where you want to go from now. It's a fantastic exercise. I loved doing that.
Super interesting, and it's lovely to hear that in an audience full of writers. So tell me, in the writing of this, writer to writer, were there any surprises in Remo's own life when you were writing? Were there patterns, new ways of seeing things, a kind of a narrative emerged that was even fresh to you?
Absolutely. And you mentioning that there are writers here, you just gave me a whole list and a whole background on all the illustrious writers here. I'm nervous about this. And like I said, I never ever thought that I would ever be anywhere in a literary festival with a book out. And the first time that I went to a literary festival, I was pretty, I won't say nervous or shy, but asking myself, do I really belong in this world? Then I consoled myself by telling myself, well, if I ask all these fantastic writers to sing a song, maybe I'll sing it better. That was a consolation. And I'm feeling a little bit at ease now. And yes, it was a fantastic discovery of myself, writing this. And a discovery of how much I remembered. I couldn't believe that I remembered all those things that I wrote about. Like I said in the song, they're like little birds, and you never know where they'll fly once you start writing. You never know where they'll fly and which memory they'll pick up on, which can of worms they'll open. And I try to write about them all. The songs by the birds as well as the worms that they pick up. And I hope I've been honest. I have been as honest as I could. I hope I've been honest enough while writing that book. A lot of people have told me that I have.
I think, one of the things about the book that's really marvelous, it's interesting you mentioned that because for me, of course, I was super interested in your life and I've been a fan for many years in a multi-dimensional way, so I was interested in the book. But it immediately yielded value for me as a writer who looks at this culture because it's a meticulous cultural archive, actually. And what Remo said about how much he could remember, it's quite astounding because I actually live maybe 50 meters away from your ancestral home here, opposite the Marriott, kind of, right, behind Solmar. And so the geography is very familiar to me, but the way you reconstruct the atmosphere, he's also got photographs. It's very meticulous. The individuals that he mentions, it's like a family tree of Panjim, actually, you know, and the cultural history and the way it emerged. So it's a really terrific book for that reason, and I must compliment you for that part of it. And of course, it also depicts a world. So over the course of the last 2 or 3 days, we have a number of our finest writers from around India here. Over the last 2 or 3 days, they've been being exposed to a little bit. Of course, we want to know about the worlds that they have brought into life, but we're also trying to talk to them about Goa. Mr. Mauzo, General Cardo spoke to them about the Goa he knew from 80 years ago. This book has a lot about the Panjim, which they are experiencing now in kind of hipster 2023 Instagram era Panjim. What was Panjim like when you were growing up here in your childhood, or would you like, can you tell them, help us explain?
I'll tell them, read my book. It's all there. Buy it first.
True, but does it feel like, I mean, if you had to help me describe to these authors the sleepy, pleasant, intimate city that you grew up in
I don't know, how do you describe perfection?
Perfection.
How do you describe perfection? And especially when you're a kid, everything is perfect. Especially when you're a kid who's been lucky enough to have a perfect life, you know. There are so many artists whose childhoods are troubled and traumatized and being molested by family members and horrible things. But I was just one of those that grew up in a fairy tale childhood, in a fairy tale family, in a fairy tale neighborhood, which I've described. I used to run in and out of all my neighbors' homes. The oldest one was 8 years old. He used to collect stamps. He used to allow me to sit on his chair, on his lap, and go through all his stamps. But I was not allowed to touch anything, could only look. And once in a while, he would let me look through this magic thing called a magnifying glass. Because it was magic for a kid of 6 and 7 years old. Then I wanted to be a philatelist myself. And then my father bought me a little set of an album and a few stamps, foreign stamps. But you know, philately is too passive a profession for a 6-year-old. So after a little while, I was back to football and cornhole and marbles and stuff. The neighborhood on the other side, all this is across the street, okay? And crossing the street you were allowed to do alone because crossing the street was almost as safe as taking a walk in your own compound. You know, traffic was 1 car every 5 minutes in the middle of Panjim. On the other side, there was a Lar dos Damanenses. Lar is like a home of Daman people. So there were students from Daman who were studying in Goa. Goa, Daman, and Diu were Portuguese colonies, as all of you, or most of you must be knowing. And Goa being the most important one, all the higher educational institutions were here. So if anybody wanted to do a higher course from Daman, from Diu, they had to come to Goa. And they were staying over there, and on evenings when they were very homesick, they would sit in the veranda and sing songs from Daman, and there were such beauties. And that's where I heard Maria Pitashi for the first time. I recorded my own version of that song a few years ago, and it became a huge hit all over India. and especially with Goans, of course, and showing that music and language knows no barrier, especially when this language knows no barrier when it's in a song, and because it's in the Portuguese, which even the Portuguese cannot understand. Really, the Daman Portuguese is a dialect in its own, that the Portuguese can. I have to translate the song into Barra da Damão Minuzi, estreita e comprida. Alegre na entrada, Minuzi, triste na saída. Alegre na entrada e triste na saída. Only when I say it this way can a Portuguese person understand it. But this is the Portuguese from Daman, and on the right hand side there was a Gujarati family staying, and they had two sons of my age. I mean, one was 1 year younger, one was 1 year older, so at that time it was the same age. And they were my best friends growing up. Raju and Chandu. And I've written about all of things here and how I could just run in and out of all these houses, all this. So, and a couple of houses after me, there were the Sardasais, who were the eldest brother, the eldest son was a professor at the Lyceum, at the Honorable Lyceum in Panjim. And the youngest son became one of the best known architects in Panjim, Sardasai. And their sisters used to tease me. They used to say, "She, tu cristão, tu mas rata. See, you are a Christian and you eat meat." And I used to say, "She, you are a Hindu and your dog is and your God is an elephant." And it just symbolizes the communal harmony that there was in Goa. We used to laugh about these things, tease each other. Today, if somebody had to say things like that, they would start a riot, probably, depending who one said it to. It's so sad what's happening to it. But anyway, like I said, I was a 6-year-old who would run in and out of these houses of people of different ages, and I thought of all of them as my friends. I used to go to this 80-year-old stamp collector with my Ludo or a Snakes and Ladders board under my hand. "Senhor Evaristo, quer brincar? Vamos brincar. Mr. Evaristo, you want to play?" As if he was my contemporary. And he would sit and play Snakes and Ladders and Ludo with me for hours. I'm sorry, I'm going on.
Glorious old world atmosphere
Yes,
that you describe, and then how did you go from there to become India's pioneering rock and roll guy? How did that happen? What is the moment? Is it music that did it to you? Is it the times? Is it the hippies that were coming into Goa? Is it a combination? I know it's in the book, but how would you describe it?
There was no particular moment when I decided I was going to be a musician. When music hit me, I first went on stage when I was 5. So I always thought of myself as this little boy who played and sang. That's it. It was as natural as breathing. Just as we all of us write. We write letters, we write emails, today. But it doesn't mean that we think of ourselves as authors. I mean, those who are not authors, we still write. So in the same way, so many kids in Goa all sang, at least sang, if not played the guitar. So many kids played the guitar and other instruments. And I always thought of myself as this kid who played. It was normal. And I went up on stage when I was 5, as I said. My father took me to a recital, a concert at a club, at a social club in Panjim, the Club Nacional. And that's it. And I loved it. I took to the stage like to use a very common expression, like a fish takes to water. Because before that, I used to make my parents sit in the living room, and I would part the curtains and appear there as if that was a stage. And they had to clap, of course. And then I would bow, then I would sing a song, and they had to clap again, and I would bow again and part the curtains and walk off. So that, so the thing of being on stage was always there in me. And so it never came to, that's the time when I decided to be a musician. No, there came a time when, that was the time when I decided to be an architect. Okay. Don't ask me why. That was the biggest mistake in my life. But Because I was told that music was a great pastime, but that it wasn't a secure enough profession. And sure enough, it wasn't. At that time in Goa, there was no future in music. So I had to have a proper profession. Medicine and all those other things didn't interest me, but a cousin came down from London and the whole family made a big fuss of him. He's an architect, he's an architect. I said, what is that? No, he's an architect. I said, what does an architect do? He designs houses. Oh, design. That's right up my alley, because I love drawing also. Besides music, I love drawing. I still do. And a lot of my drawings in the book, by the book. It's a lot of my drawings. And Papa Collins would be so proud of me if they were here today. And
They've done right by you, and you're doing very right by them. There's no doubt. The book's doing very well. By the way, Professor Mustansir Dalvi of JJ School of College of Architecture is here. He's a dear friend of the festival and a terrific poet. So here's what happens to the best of architects, Mustansir, because that's his alma mater.
I hope you don't know anything about my attendance records. I don't think you were there at my time. You're too young to have been there.
Little later.
Yeah.
But what about rock and roll? So the music I understand, but very few. How did this epiphany come that you decided to make it an art form and that you expressed yourself via your original music? The history of Indian rock and roll, by the way, Remo is intrinsic to the history of Indian rock and roll from the very beginning. The Savages, from the Savages, and then of course India's first hit rock pop songs were all by Remo, and of course the singer-songwriter he sang to Rajiv Gandhi, had the temerity to sing to Rajiv Gandhi, and Rajiv Gandhi responded, and then you became the first Indian musician to be a cultural export in this medium. All of this is quite a remarkable kind of a new thing for India. How did the light bulb go on for you that this became the style of music?
I would like to correct you a little bit on that, not out of humility, but out of respect for these artists. When I was in school in Goa, there was a band from Calcutta who released a 45 record called Love is a Mango. I don't know how many of you are old enough to have known that song. It was a beautiful song, and they used a sitar.
Love is a mango.
Love is a mango. Love is a mango that grows on a tree. Wait till the mango is ripe. That was a tune that rings a bell anywhere. But that was, that was the first original song, a pop song that I heard by an Indian group.
Okay.
And I was still in school, so they were a few years older to me. And the other record that I heard, of course, that was not an original song. It was the Savages again,
Right.
who recorded a foreign hit called Simple Simon Says.
Oh.
So when I was eventually asked to join the Savages, for me, they were these recording artists. A recording contract at the time was like if you were a recording artist, you were like sitting next to God at God's right hand up there in heaven. And they asked me to join their band. I couldn't believe it. But yeah, Love is a Mango is the first original pop song, Indian pop song that I heard. And not many people realize this or see it that way, but the first pop fusion music that I heard was by a Parsi gentleman called Meena Kaba, who wrote these amazing hits called Bombay Meri Hai. Everybody knows it today, but nobody thinks of it as Indo-Western fusion. It played a very serious role, way, way ahead of its time. With that Maharashtrian kind of beat and English lyrics. I married a female wrestler, that was another hit of his. And
Makes sense,
so these
actually.
guys are the forerunners actually to what I did. But yeah, I was there soon after that. And
What are the records that you heard that made your life, that maybe helped you understand that rock was going to be your thing?
rock happened to me, again, the same cousin of mine is to blame, the guy who influenced me into architecture. He came down from England.
At least the second time you were right.
Yeah, the second time he was right. He and another female cousin of of ours. They both came down from London on holidays, and they brought a record by Bill Haley and the Comets called Rock Around the Clock. And they demonstrated this new dance to us in their living room. And I couldn't believe this dance. The couple hardly touched each other. All we had seen among them were waltzes and foxtrots and rambas and sambas and of course tangos. Here they flung each other in the air, they pushed each other to the other corner of the room, and they lifted each other on the. What was happening here? And that music, that rock music, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, so exciting. The excitement was something else. Until then, I'd grown up on Portuguese music, on Latin music, beautiful, the most beautiful music, one of the most beautiful musics in the world, I would say. But rock and roll was something else. Just 2 chords, 3 chords were enough. That excitement, and I must have been about 10, 11. So at that age, that impression is true. And then, of course, like you rightly said, the hippie era, when music took a turn for the serious, for amazing, amazing music. Kids today say that the best music they hear is from the record, from the record collection of their parents, music from the Woodstock era. The most meaningful music for a long time, because after that, music in the West became so commercial and pro-establishment. They didn't even talk about the establishment after that. But in the 70s, it was so anti-establishment, anti-war, anti-this, anti-that, and it was so meaningful. And at one festival like Woodstock, there were all genres of music happening, all genres of artists, and the same one audience enjoying it all. That was the difference between the audience of those days and the audience of today. Today, an audience goes to a trance party, all they want to hear is all night long, maybe for 3 nights. And you play a folk song there, and they'll boo the artist out. That's how compartmentalized we have become. In music, in food, in books, in everything. You either like this or you like that. But that one same audience sitting from Joan Baez to 10 years after, to the heaviest rock, to the sweetest folk singing, and everything in between, those were the years. And that movie was something else, because there was no television in India. So although we had heard records by these fantastic international artists, we had never seen them on stage. When I saw what they did on stage, I couldn't believe it. The energy, the movement. I went and I saw that film every day that it ran at Eros. My bunking classes at JJ's, that's why I was hoping that the professor at JJ's didn't know about my attendance record. But that was not the only time when I bunked classes. I also sat in my hostel room with my guitar and wrote songs and devised a way to tune the guitar, make it sound like a sitar, because again it was Woodstock which inspired me to find my Indian roots, because in Woodstock, Joe Cocker had done an amazing version of With a Little Help from My Friends. And I hate it when somebody touches a Beatles song, because again, how dare you touch perfection, you know? But Joe Cocker's version was the only one which I liked as much as the Beatles, totally different from the Beatles version. With a Little Help from My Friends was a masterpiece. And I went home and I decided, I'm an Indian and I want to do an Indian version of it, Little Help from My Friends. So I worked out a way to tune my guitar so it sounded a bit like a sarod or a sitar, and I Indianized my vocals, and so Woodstock inspired me to look into my own roots as well. Again, I'm just going.
Amazing. You can see why the book is so compelling. I definitely want to take some questions from the audience. They will have a lot of questions for you. But we had discussed perhaps you reading a segment now, so and then we'll take questions directly.
Sure. Starting one, you can read after you decide. Okay, Vivek has chosen
This we thought
passage
to bring you up to date in Remo's life.
This passage is called On Vasco da Gama's Reverse Trail. I was disillusioned with the way Goa was going, and I guess I was subconsciously searching for a place where I could find the simple things I had grown up with as a child. Cleanliness, respect for nature, discipline, and grace on the roads, and in queues, and in all spheres of life. A government that worked for the country and for the people. No blatant corruption, and above all, a populace that was respectful, polite, kind, helpful, and honest towards each other. I realized I had used these qualities to describe the Goa I grew up in the beginning chapters of this book. I was now coming full circle. I had traveled to half the countries in the world thanks to my profession, and I could see clearly that I was rediscovering all of these intangible but priceless treasures in Porto, together with an unexpected sensation of coming back to my roots. By the time we returned to Goa, I started seriously thinking of getting myself an apartment in Porto to spend, say, 3 or 4 months a year there. I had never left Goa for better prospects, neither financial nor professional, not even to go to Mumbai, the showbiz capital of India, which I'm sure would have yielded me at least 10 times more money and fame. But now that the beauty of Goa I had stayed back for was fast disappearing, not just a natural beauty being smothered under greedy, ugly concrete, but also the people's honesty, warmth, friendliness, and hospitality, I surprised myself thinking that I could gladly leave it for a few months every year. In Portugal, I had found the Goa that might have been, if it had only developed in the right way, with restrictions, protecting Mother Nature, with firmness, historic monuments and beautiful ancient villages carefully preserved and restored, perfect roads leading everywhere, electricity, water, internet, cable TV, and other services that didn't break down even once in years. And not just a judiciary that made laws, but also an enforcement that saw to it that everyone followed them. A place where you could walk into a government office and half an hour later walk out with everything you had come for without the reddest possibility of someone asking for a bribe or harassing you. Also, I had reached a stage in life which made such a move easy. Both my parents had passed away, so there was no longer an aged mother or father I didn't want to stay away from for months. My sons had both flown the nest. Noah had completed his multimedia course in Singapore and now worked there. And Jonah was studying underwater cinematography in Thailand. And I no longer had a wife who would have insisted on me buying a place in her France instead. No more ties binding me down or holding me back. My live shows too had diminished considerably for reasons explained earlier, and I could always fly back for those. I was going to make Vasco da Gama's journey from Portugal to Goa in reverse, and in much greater comfort than in his caravan. The nationality that I was born into is the title of the next passage. Portugal had never cancelled Goans' Portuguese nationalities from its records, for the simple reason that Goans, unlike say the Brazilians or the Angolans, had never revolted against Portuguese occupation or fought to drive them out. The Portuguese decreed that the Satyagrahas who fought for Goa's liberation movement had come mainly from Goa's neighboring states. Therefore, Portugal saw and recognized all Goans born in Goa before 1961 as their descendants and their descendants as being entitled to Portuguese nationality. And they do so until today. I contacted the same lawyer whose work on my Portuguese nationality I had interrupted back in 1979. Luckily, he still had my papers and said very little was left to turn me into a full-fledged Portuguese national. I asked him to please go ahead and complete the procedure for all these years. It was curious how the flag I had drawn as a child in my school drawing books continued to arouse emotion. not as a matter of political affiliation, but as an emotion one feels on eating mother's cooking after decades. Also, seeing the very Portuguese language written all around me, even the simple and common atenção, attention, or perigo, danger, on signboards near railway lines or high voltage electrical installations, thrilled me and brought back childhood memories of Goa. I wasn't opting for the nationality of a strange new country like the US or Canada or the UK. I was returning to the nationality, language, country and flag of my childhood, those I had held as my own until the tender age of 8. When I was a hitchhiker in Europe in the 70s, I had marveled at people who traveled so easily with their European passports without requiring visas for most countries, at how they used a plastic card to walk into an ATM and withdraw their money whenever and wherever they needed it, at how they could own cars and driving licenses there, and even at how they could go to their own homes and apartments at the end of the day. Well, now I would have all those things, and it felt like a long cherished dream coming true.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Remo. Let's take some questions from the audience. We're starting with Amit Ranjan, fine poet who's launched his book here at the festival, also has a wonderful book on John Lang.
Hi, Remo.
Hi.
You are that cousin who came the first time, and I held the guitar and never succeeded with it. Like you failed with architecture. So I have two questions. I'm about 20, the remaining 18 I'll send on email. The first one is
about?
I have two questions.
Yes.
The remaining 18 I'll send on email.
Okay.
The first is, do you remember the New Year song you sang on Doordarshan when I was 4 years old? That's the question. If you could sing it at the end. The second question is, would you like to share something from your time in Caribbean? I'm really fascinated by Jahaji music, the film. I often show it to my students.
That's why I didn't understand that. Would I like to share what?
Any funny or frustrating incident from your time in Caribbean? From I've seen Jahaji music. I show it to my students quite often. It's a fascinating film. And also your engagement with them is fascinating, both the funny and the frustrating aspect of it. So if you'd like to share anything funny or frustrating. And finally, a bonus question. How or why do you refuse to age? You could either answer how or the why. Thank you.
Somebody just told me that I've been answering this question with the same answer for the last 15 years. You know, why don't I look my age? And I told her that it's because you've been asking me the same question for the last 25 years. So how can I change my answer every year? The answer is booze, sex, and rock and roll. Okay, that's a joke. Okay, now there's much less booze in my life. The first question, when you were 4 years old, now I've got to figure out how old you are now to figure out what song I sang when you were 4 years old. But a New Year song.
On Doordarshan.
Yeah, on Doordarshan. I remember doing one New Year program on Doordarshan. I think I sang a song called Ocean Queen.
Ocean Queen.
Was it Ocean Queen?
In the lyrics there was Happy New Year as well. That's why.
Oh, okay. Then I think it was a composition of mine where it first came about when I was doing a New Year show, and I just made it up at midnight. And then every year it became a thing, you know. Goodbye, 81. You've been a whole lot of fun. And then hello, 82. The beat was. And then it was hello, 82. 82, how do you do? The CD rhymed like that. And then the next year it was goodbye, 82. Something.
We're talking 87.
Hello, 83. I hope you're going to set me free. Whatever, you know, whatever came to mind, let's just freak out. And see, it was that kind of song. And for that whole mood, I need my band, but okay. That's the second. No, that was the first question. Caribbean, there was nothing frustrating about the Caribbean except that the women were too beautiful. And there's nothing very frustrating about that. But funny incidents, yeah, there were lots of funny incidences, and just understanding their English was such a challenge, and listening to their English, the Rasta English especially, was always amazing to listen to, and the realization that Jamaica, okay, I'm a little away from, that Jamaica, that small little island, the self-confidence that those people have in themselves, I discovered when I finally smoked a joint in Jamaica. I was self-confident as well. It's a very different kind of ganja, marijuana, very different from the one we get here. And to think that little island had produced Nobel Prize winners in literature, in different fields, a small little island, and the music, to realize that they had been ruling world music ever since I can remember the Calypso onwards. From Calypso onwards, the world had been grooving to Jamaican music. But now I had heard rap. Rap was ruling America, therefore the world. And when I went to Jamaica, I heard rap. And I was quite disappointed, and I told them, oh my God, so finally America managed to conquer you all. And now you're not playing rap. You don't have your own music anymore like you did reggae just a few years ago. You were ruling the world with reggae. And they said, you joking, man? I can't do the whole Jamaican trip, but they said rap comes from dance hall. Dance hall was the name of rap music in Jamaica. It came from Jamaica. Now, Americans could not, copy reggae and claim it was theirs, that they invented it. They could not do that to Calypso. But when rap came out, Americans just took it over and changed the name of the music. So rap music also came from Jamaica. Can you imagine that? Even today, the small little island is ruling the world in music. And really, the self-confidence that they have in themselves is amazing, amazing. So more than funny or frustrating incidents, I think this is what I took away from the Caribbean, from I think the music in Seychelles and in Reunion Island and in Mauritius, especially Mauritius, the Sega, they all have a music called Sega, and especially the music from Mauritius is so very much like the Goan, but except that the accent is on a different beat. The Goan beat is whereas their accent is so the accent is on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And somehow after I came back from the Caribbean, I incorporated that beat when I sing Goan music, including Maria Pitashi. It just came naturally to me. Singing Goan, because it's all 3, 4, 4 12s or whatever. I don't know music theory, okay, but it's that kind of a rhythm, but it's that kind of tempo. But the beat, the way it's played on the drums is different than I play it that way. So a lot of influences. I forgot what your third and fourth you promised.
He said he'd email you 18 more. He'll email you 18 more.
18? 18.
He will email you 18 more.
Sentence to say, which is that.
No, can we have somebody else?
Yeah.
Please, can we
One.
give a chance to somebody
2
else?
more questions. Some more questions? Anyone else with a question? Remo, what about writing? Are you continuing to write? Are you going to be doing another book?
Emali Sodi, my agent, has been insisting that I write another book, but really I can't think of what to write about, because I'm not a writer really. And I read long ago that one should write about what the one knows. And what do I know better than my own life story? So that's what I've written already. And whether I can imagine and make up another story, I don't know. If it ever comes to me, I will. I will write. But until then, I'm not going to.
Well, you wrote an opera, right? Could you tell the story of that? That's a very interesting
Yes,
story.
that was something which it was on the life and work of Mother Teresa. Before you start to think that it's a religious work, it's not at all. It's almost as irreverent as the Jesus Christ Superstar was. It was Jesus. Just Jesus' story as a man, and this is just her story, her life and her work. And many years ago, I went to Calcutta and I happened to meet her. I went to meet her, and as she held, she's got this habit of holding your hand in both of hers like this. And when she did that to me, electricity, whatever, passed through all of me, and I suddenly had that idea on the spot. I said, Mother, I would like to compose a song about you, and I want to put it on my next album, and the royalties from that song, I would like to contribute as my small little contribution for your work. And she said, beautiful, my son, do it. But do it with love for Jesus. And I told myself, I'm not capable of feeling love for any one religion or religious aid, because to me God is beyond religion, but let's not talk about that. I said I'll do it with love for Mother Teresa and for Mother Teresa's love for Jesus. And anyway, so on the flight back from Calcutta to Bombay, one had to stop in Bombay at that time, there were no direct flights to Goa. In those 2.5 hours, I who had never ever composed more than one song in a day, and that too not every day, I wrote 4 songs about Mother Teresa. I didn't know why. I don't want to attribute any supernatural reason for that, but I wrote 4 songs. I came back and I started recording them, but I could not find the right singers, at least not in Goa at that time. Because one song was supposed to be sung by Mother Teresa herself, one by the Mother Superior in Calcutta, one by the Pope in Rome, and the 4th one was an instrumental. So I kept it aside and I told myself I'll ask my friends who are into theatre in Bombay to record these songs for me one day. And those were the very, very busy years in my career. So before I knew it, 27 years went by, and I never went back to that work, although it was always there in the back of my mind. In the meanwhile, Mother Teresa died and went away. And then I was in Portugal. I had already moved to Portugal, when I suddenly had yet another attack of a very bad back pain, and I was in bed for a month. And then I had these visions of horrible nightmares of being an invalid one day, and how would I record songs? I have to devise a way to put everything in such a way that I can lie down and record, attach my keyboard and my speakers and everything horizontally instead of vertically. I made a vow at that time that as soon as I get off this bed, I'm going to finish this project which I started 27 years ago, Mother Teresa's songs. This 4 or 6, maybe I'll make it 6 songs now. And this time I will not stop until I complete all the songs. And I also made a vow that another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to restart work on this book, which I had started 6 or 9 years earlier, which also I've kept aside of the 3 chapters for the last 9 years. And sure enough, as soon as I got out of bed, I started recording those 4 songs of Mother Teresa. When I finished the first song is her song when she decides to become a nun. And And the second song is a Mother Superior welcoming her in Calcutta, into Calcutta. And instead of recording the third song, which was the Pope's song, which took place much later, on the day that I completed the second song, an idea came for a third song, for a new third song. The day I completed the third song, when I was taking my morning shower, I had a fourth song ready, and in my mind, and I went and recorded that. By the time I finished the fourth, it just went on and on and on. I could not stop it. I had never recorded one song a day or one song after the other like that. I had never composed one song after the other in my life. And without stop, in 1 year, I had 48 songs. 48 songs, and it became an opera. And I call it an opera and not a musical, because technically an opera does not have any spoken words, any spoken lines. It's all sung, and this one is all sung. There were 35 singers in it. There were different characters in it, much more than just the Pope and the Mother Superior. And I never knew that I could, compose an opera. And the final magical thing, I like to call it magic. You can call it whatever you want. The final magical thing that happened when I completed the opera is, God, how long is an opera supposed to be? I didn't even know that. I loved Jesus Christ Superstar, the opera. I loved The Greatest Showman on Earth. I loved The Sound of Music. I loved so many musicals, so many. But I never timed them. I had no idea how long the musical was supposed to be. And with trepidation, I went and I checked. And they were all 2 hours long, more or less 2 hours long. With even greater trepidation, I went and checked the length of my opera. It was 1 hour and 57 minutes long. There were 3 minutes remaining. And I had not written an overture. So those 3 minutes, I composed an overture and I recorded that. And the same kind of magic happened when I was writing this book. I told you I had no experience with writing a book. And one thing after the other just fell in place, and the chapters and stuff like that. And so besides buying this book, also buy the Mother Teresa album. But that music, because that money is not going to HarperCollins and much less to me. I'm not even deducting money for my expenditure in recording that opera. It is all going to the poorest of the poor in this world. And that is my small little contribution towards the people in our society, our own co-citizens of this country and of this world who are less privileged than us, that's all. And it's called Teresa and the Slum Bum. The slum, I told you, it was irreverent. The slum bum is this character that I've invented, who is a character in the slum who sees her coming into the slum for the first time. He's a dada in the slum. He's a wannabe Mithun Chakrabarti with dirty white pants and a yellow shirt, slightly torn, and a sweaty red scarf. He's always dressed that way, hair greased with motorcycle oil probably, and he's a wannabe Bollywood hero. Says, hey, what's a pretty white girl like you doing in a slum like this? And that's the way he welcomes her to the slum. Not welcomes her. He's sure that she's just going to come like all the other so-called, high society benefactors. He's going to hand over some money and run away from the slum as soon as she can. He thinks that that's what she's going to do. But when he sees that she's not going nowhere, and she's there, and she's there, and she's there, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, he becomes her greatest supporter and fan. And that's how the opera develops. So buy the opera, please. It's available online on every. No, this time I'm not asking you to buy it out of any personal motives. It will help your fellow citizens. But besides that, believe me, it is beautiful music. If you like opera, I think. Well, when I say beautiful music, it's the best music I've done in my life. That much I can say. I won't say it's beautiful music. That's up to you to judge. It's the best piece of music that I've created.
Remo, one second. I just want to ask you.
1 second. Last question.
In Mexican, Spanish, and even Spain, you call a song called cantar. And I felt a lot of similarity between Goan music and their music. What is your opinion on Mexican songs, especially Paulo's songs?
Yes, there's a lot of similarity. Mexican rhythms and South American, the rhythms especially. All of them have the 6/8 beat that I'm talking about in Goan music. Rock and roll is a straight 4/4. Whereas Goan music has got not only Goan, Indian music has a lot, Indian folk music has a lot of this beat. South American music has it. The Caribbean music has it. This the 6/8 rhythm. So you're right. And the melodies in South America are also very simple and catchy, very folksy. Just like the Goan music. And cantar is a Portuguese word which means to sing. It's an infinite form of the word to sing, of the verb to sing. Cantar. Eu canto, tu cantas, ele canta. Vós cantamos, vós cantais, eles cantam. So cantar is the verb, to sing. And then in company we also call it a cantar mandre. You sing a song. So cantar, we adapted it to mean a song, not just the verb to sing, but to mean the noun, a song. And yes, that's what cantar comes from. And you've been such a lovely audience, and you've been so patient in listening to this singer talk and yap. As a personal thing, I'd like to sing you a couple of songs if you don't mind. I mean, somebody was
Yes, there is. Would it?
Yes,
Remo, the Professor Mustansir Dalvi would like to, before you sing, ask you
Yes,
something.
sir.
I wanted to ask you to sing a song.
I beat you to it. Yeah, I think there's another gentleman here with a beard.
Sir, I have seen very few musicians like you, especially in India, who write their own lyrics, who compose their song, who make their own arrangement, who record their song. So, a musician like you, when you worked with legendary Bollywood composers like Mr. Remo or Mr. Jatin Lalit, both of them, they were one of the biggest of 90s in their own way. So Jatin Lalit comes from a traditional kind of music like Lakshmikant Parallel and all. So how was your experience working with those two composers? Think yourself. So was that freedom, was that given to you, and how was your experience basically?
First of all, I'm this very humble guy who will not tell you that besides a whole list of things you just named about what I do in music, that I compose the lyrics. I won't tell you that I also write the script, that I design my own album covers. I won't tell you any of that. But the experience working with Rahman and with Jatin Lalit, Jatin Lalit have done some songs which are copies of Western songs. Luckily, Pyar To Na Hi Tha wasn't one of those. Although they actually lifted the guitar introduction of, what's that song? Yeah, When You Really Love a Woman. And they put it right in the beginning. It wasn't necessary. I don't know why they did that little piece of plagiarism, because it wasn't necessary. The song is so beautiful in itself. It was a pleasure singing it. And no, they don't really insist on me, on telling me what to do. On the contrary, whenever I've been asked to sing a film song, I've been always told to try and sing it in my way. So when I said, Pyar To Na Hi Tha, nobody corrected me. And months later, when the song came out and everybody said, you said ta instead of tha, I asked Jatin Lalit, man, why didn't you correct me? Even the lyric writer was there, why did you correct? No, because it was cute. And now they started to sing Pyar To Hona Hi Tha. You know, people don't want me to do it. They expect me to sing Pyar To Hona Hi Tha. And why did it come out Tha? Because in Goan, Catholic, Konkani, the sounds Tha, Tha, Bha don't really exist. We say Ta, Da, Ba. In Goan Hindu Konkani, yes, all those Indian sounds exist. So that's why I sang it that way. And working with Remo, and Remo, of course, never lips a song or part of a song. I've been always a great fan of Remo. So meeting him backstage after a show, at a show in Delhi where he and I both performed was a fantastic experience. And he asked me, Remo, would you sing a song in Telugu? I said, what? I have enough problems singing in Hindi, man. Telugu. But then I tried. I said, I didn't know what I was getting, myself in for. And 1 week later, he called me and he said, there's a song called Hama Hama, will you sing it? And I went to Chennai, and if I thought that I had problems pronouncing Hindi, in Telugu, I could not even hear the different nuances that they wanted me to pronounce. Very tough, very tough. But I believe the Telugu version also became a huge hit. I'm sure because of my mispronunciations. But so is the Hindi version, and it was a pleasure working for them. It was a pleasure working for most of the Hindi film industry music directors. Because as you know, I write my own songs. So once in a way, I'm singing somebody else's song and trying to put my own, it's a different feeling. Or composing a song. I've also composed songs for other singers by studying their style and composing a song for their style. One of the most notable ones was Remo, who is a famous singer from Goa. And I had represented India at a festival in East Germany at that time. And I'd won 3 awards at that festival, and they asked me to name a singer for the next year. And the first names that came to me were these national names. And Hema was known only in Goa, and she was not known outside Goa at all. And suddenly I thought, why not Hema? She's as good as all these national singers, and she needs it more than any other one. And one of the conditions was everybody had to sing an original song. So I composed a song for her to sing according to her style, and she won the Grand Prix. She won the prize there in East Germany next year. So just to tell you that I enjoyed in all these different things in music. There's so many things you can do besides just take the guitar and sing. You can compose in composing itself. You can compose for yourself. You can compose for a film, or you can compose for another singer and for that singer's style. All these things are different, and there are so many. Like in every profession, there are different nuances that a layman cannot see, but only somebody who is in the profession knows the different nuances in each profession. Each profession is like a universe in itself. It's beautiful. And I think it's going way above Limca time. Limca time was a code word of my parents' generation for drink time in Goa. They would drink anything but Limca. So I'll take my guitar and sing a couple of songs for you, okay? Because,
Thank you so much. What a pleasure. Please buy the book. Such a privilege, Remo, for you to end the festival with singing. It's on behalf of Damodar Mazo and myself and the International Center. Thank you so much for coming. That was a wonderful session. Please buy the book. It's invaluable, and enjoy the music.
thank you. Can I find one, please? One. Check, you put it off. 1. 1, 2. And the reverb. Can you make maybe the guitar should be a little softer. A little bit, I don't know much. Masti, Gangan, Kangere. और घर की पायल मस्ती में तो गंगान करके रे हम्मा 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 हे हम्मा 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 प्यार तो होना ही था 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 You're a crazy clown, you're a merry-go-round, you're king and clown, never lie down. Bombay City, the sun goes up and the sun goes down, and the ladies of the night are always around. Bombay City, you got crazy colors and crazy sounds, but your crazy perfume is out of bounds. Bombay City, you're rich people who live up on a steeple, but the people who are little just suck a dry nipple. Bombay City, bom 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 Bombay, you're just not in Bombay. Bom 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 Bombay, tell me what you gotta say. Bom 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 Bombay, they say you're gonna go away, but I know you won't. I know you'll stay, and I'm giving to Judgment Day.